Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share, and restack buttons. Well, this is unsustainable. We're going to look at exactly what that is in a moment. First of all, this is a special Tuesday video. Usually I put videos out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But today I'm switching Wednesday's video to Tuesday. And Tuesdays I usually put out an article, a written article. That will come out tomorrow, and the reason is because tomorrow will be the 6-month anniversary of the launch of the Substack. So if you're signed up to the Substack, you'll receive that email tomorrow. Be on the lookout for that. If not, you can go read that at brittgillette.substack.com. You don't have to sign up. You can read it for free. It'll be right there. But it gives a good overview on where we stand with the Substack, what's happened since the launch, what might be coming in the future. So be on the lookout for that. Now, what is it that is unsustainable? Because there is no doubt, it's basic math, it's unsustainable. It is this right here. So this is from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, and we're looking at the United States national debt. Now, this is debt that's been incurred. It doesn't include what they call unfunded liabilities, such as obligations to pay Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid in future years. Otherwise, we're looking at over 100 trillion. According to this is the end of the second quarter. They're saying 34.8 trillion. As of today, it's around just short of 5.4 trillion. so since the end of that second quarter, we've added over $500 billion. And you might say, well, in and of itself, that doesn't mean that this is unsustainable, because let's say you have $35 quadrillion in income. Well, if that's the case, then $35 trillion in debt, not such a big deal. The only problem is the United States generates nothing near any amount in the quadrillions. So let's take a look at this, also from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. This is, well, interest payments on the national debt. And as of the end of the second quarter, those were at over $1 trillion, $1,089 billion in interest payments, interest alone on the national debt. So this doesn't go towards Social Security, military spending, Medicare, building a road or a highway, nothing. It's just interest on the debt that's already been racked up. And you'll notice something here. This is somewhat of a near vertical line that doesn't resemble anything else we see on this curve, maybe a little bit here. But any previous increases are dwarfed by what we've seen in the past 4 years. In fact, we've seen interest in less than 4 years, interest on the national debt has more than doubled. So that leads us to this article right here from Zero Hedge. This is from last week. They said endgame interest on the U.S. debt surpasses $1 trillion for the first time ever. Not necessarily. They're looking at during an annual, like 1 year period, not a 12-month revolving period, as we just did. But it says exploding August budget deficit to a record high. A record high of $380 billion was the budget deficit just for the month of August, up more than 50% from the $243 billion in July, and almost $100 billion more than the median estimate of $292.5 billion. So let's think about that for a moment each month. These tend to go up and down a little here and there. They're not steady from month to month. But if we took that over a 12-month period, that would be a $4.5 trillion annual budget deficit, which is just unbelievable. Up until recent times, $1 trillion was unbelievable to most people, but now we're starting to talk into the multiple trillions, and that's assuming we don't have, say, an economic calamity that leads to lowered tax revenues, which, as we said before, we're in a depression now. They don't recognize it yet. We're heading toward a stock market crash. When that happens, we'll see lower capital gains tax revenues coming in, and the budget deficit will explode. So this says the U.S. national debt just closed above $35.3 trillion and is growing by about $1 trillion every 100 days, which again would mean an annual deficit of $3.65 trillion if you do the math on that. So that means that with interest rates at 40-year highs, the prediction we made last July, and this is zero hedge, has finally come true because according to today's budget statement, the amount spent on gross interest in August was $92.3 billion. That means the cumulative total for fiscal 2024, where there's one more month to go because the government operates on a accounting year that begins October 1st and ends September 30th. It says just hit an all-time high of $1,049 billion for the first time in history, where U.S. debt has surpassed $1 trillion in one fiscal year. And we just looked at over a 12-month period that happened months ago. It says, and what's worse, the number isn't even annualized because that's just for 11 months. Annualized, that comes out to $1.158 trillion, or almost $1.2 trillion, rounded up as the Treasury itself admits. And the stunning punchline is that as of today, gross interest on U.S. debt has surpassed not just defense spending, but also income security, health, veterans benefits, and Medicare, and is now the second biggest outlay of the U.S. government, second only to Social Security, which is roughly $1.5 trillion annualized. So again, we're not even talking about the annual deficit. We're just talking about interest on the national debt. Already the second biggest expense in the U.S. budget, set to soon become the number one expense. Because it says, wait, there's more. The latest numbers confirm we're well on our way to hitting another forecast from April 1st of the U.S. hitting an insane $1.6 trillion in interest expense by year's end, which means interest expense will soon surpass Social Security and become the single largest outlay of the U.S. government sometime in late 2024 or early 2025 at the latest. In other words, game over. Guys, this is basic math, as we're going to look at in just a moment. It's game over, and this has enormous implications, not just for the United States, but the entire globe, as we'll talk about in just a moment. But to say it's game over is not just Zero Hedge's opinion. Well, it's also the opinion of the United States government. Don't believe me? Let's come over here and look at this. This is from the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. This is part of the U.S. Department of Treasury. And they put out this annual report here on the financial report of the United States government. So this came out probably back in February for fiscal year 2023. So the last year for which we have complete data. And if we go through to the executive summary of that report, they just come right out and say it, an unsustainable fiscal path. They say an important purpose of this financial report is to help citizens understand current fiscal policy and the importance and magnitude of policy reforms necessary to make it sustainable. A sustainable fiscal policy is defined as one where the ratio of debt held by the public to GDP, that's gross domestic product, it's the sum of all the goods and services created by the entire economy, is stable or declining over the long term. Well, that isn't the case. And they tell us that. They say the current fiscal path is unsustainable. That's pretty clear. In the event that it's not clear, you dig further into their report, to their section on management's discussion and analysis, and they say it again. It says an unsustainable fiscal path. They say a sustainable fiscal policy is defined as one where the debt to GDP ratio is stable or declining over the long term. The projections based on the assumptions in this financial report indicate that current policy is not sustainable. Guys, what is not sustainable won't be sustainable. It's just common sense, meaning what we're seeing right now cannot continue, and therefore it won't continue. Again, this isn't just Zero Hedge's opinion, my opinion, the Bureau of, we could say the Bureau of the Fiscal Service, well, they're wrong. Maybe they are, because we see up here they think we should do this, right? So maybe that should give us some level of comfort. Well, if they're wrong about this, well, then maybe they're wrong about this too. Unfortunately, they're not wrong about this, as we also read from the Government Accountability Office. So this is a report on the nation's fiscal health from May 2023. Again, another government office. So this is right from the government. It's not me making this stuff up. They say the federal government faces an unsustainable long-term fiscal future. At the end of fiscal year 2022, debt held by the public was about 97% of gross domestic product. And we're going to look at this in a second. I'm not really sure where they get that number, because that is too low based on their own figures. But still, they're telling us this is unsustainable, and therefore it won't be. It says projections from the Office of Management and Budget in the Department of the Treasury, the Congressional Budget Office, and the Government Accountability Office all show that current fiscal policy is unsustainable over the long term. Debt held by the public is projected to grow at a faster pace than the size of the economy. And that mathematically cannot continue, as we'll look at in just a moment. Debt held by the public is projected to reach a historical high of 106% of GDP within 10 years, and to continue to grow at an increasing pace. Government Accountability Office projects that this ratio could reach more than twice the size of the economy by 2051, absent any changes in revenue and spending policies. I would say no, it won't, because by then the wheels will have fallen off the bus. And again, I'm not sure where they're getting this 106% from, because we come over here to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis and we have total public debt as a percentage of gross domestic product. That's the figure they're telling us is at 97%, might reach 106. Well, yeah, 10 years ago, maybe. Last time it was at 106%, according to their own figures, was the first quarter of 2020. Right now, we're at 121%. So I don't know where they're getting those figures, but even at their lower figure, they're telling us it's unsustainable, and they're correct. Why? Let's take a look at this tweet by Lawrence Lepard. He put this tweet out back in October 2019, and he's pinned it at the top of his Twitter feed because it's so important for people to understand. He says the blue line, which is GDP, again, all the goods and services created in the U.S. economy. So this represents the U.S. economy, everything produced by the U.S. economy. This red line is all the debt, not just the national debt, but all the personal debt taken on by U.S. citizens, U.S. companies. So all sectors, debt, securities, and loans. And he says the blue line, so everything we're producing in the economy, generates income to pay interest on the red line. Do you see the problem? It's just math. And then he says hashtag Weimar, reference to the Weimar Republic, post-World War I, pre-Nazi Germany, where we had hyperinflation in Germany, destroyed their currency. And of course, this, again, he put this out in 2019. This chart, here it is today. We can see we see this growing gap. You can't have debt growing faster than the economy. At least in the short term you can, but in the long term you cannot. That cannot continue. It's mathematically impossible. Eventually, what happens is all of the income generated here goes to pay all of the interest on this. As he said, the blue line generates income to pay the interest on the red line. It's what we're starting to see right now with over $1 trillion in annual interest payments. Forecast to be $1.6 trillion by the end of the year, which is just 3 months away. This cannot continue on, guys, and this has major implications for every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth. Why do I say that? Well, because the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. The US dollar is used in global trade more than any other currency. The United States economy is the world's largest. It funds the world's largest military. And that military has a mission of facilitating free trade among the nations, of making sure that the waterways are open and freely navigable for all of its trading partners. And what have we seen on that front? Well, we've seen headlines like this. From just Monday, Houthi rebels claim they shot down another U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone, another $30 million drone taken out by a ragtag band of rebels. This is the 9th Reaper drone taken out by the Houthis in less than a year. And we've talked about Operation Prosperity Guardian, launched back in December, so 9 months ago. Had a mission of making the Red Sea freely navigable for U.S. trading partners, for world trade. They have failed in that mission. And it's not just a matter of weak leadership, it's a matter of, well, the U.S. military, its conventional forces, are obsolete in many ways and incapable of securing these waterways for trade. And on top of that, we're looking at, well, the source of funding for that military is the U.S. economy and the budget, U.S. budget, which is on an unsustainable path because it's a house of cards. It's a big Ponzi scheme set to explode. We're on the verge of seeing the global monetary system simply collapse. These fiat currencies that have been in use by every nation in the world since President Nixon severed the dollar's tie to gold back in August 1971. That's an experiment we haven't seen anywhere else in world history before. Prior to that, gold, silver, copper coins were money for centuries and centuries. Now, whenever governments said, well, these little pieces of paper are claims on those gold and silver and copper coins, well, they abused that And eventually that led to hyperinflation and a collapse of those currencies, oftentimes a collapse of those governments and those nations. We're seeing the same thing play out right here. The problem was in the past when that happened, when we looked at things like Weimar Germany, where you had this hyperinflation that took place, well, there were still other gold-backed currencies that Germans could depend on, like the British pound or the US dollar. All the world's national currencies right now are fiat currencies. And that leads to a big problem that could lead to, and will lead to, a terrible end to this monetary system. It's going to lead to a lot of turmoil, because what can't mathematically continue will not continue. And so we're seeing the slow, waning, dying days of the United States as the world's preeminent global superpower, both financial and militarily. Talked about this numerous times. This can't continue on. At what point that becomes known to everyone, particularly to U.S. citizens, remains to be seen. That's where we're headed, guys, and that has, again, profound implications for global markets, the global financial system, the world military order, because if the United States is no longer the world's global financial and military superpower, well, what fills that power vacuum? What takes its place? And of course, we know the Bible states, well, the Bible tells us about the end times, and we don't see the United States being a major player at all in the end times. Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39, when Israel's under attack from the Gog of Magog invasion, there's no United States coming to Israel's aid. Well, maybe that's because there's an administration in power that doesn't want to. But maybe it's because they can't. Because the United States is no longer the power that people think it is today and that it once was in the past. I don't know, but we're seeing the United States fade from the world scene as a major player financially and militarily. And again, that has huge repercussions for everybody on the planet, and it has a huge impact in terms of Bible prophecy and setting the stage for the 7-year tribulation and then the second coming of Jesus Christ. This is what we would expect to see, and when we combine this with all the other signs that Jesus and the prophets said to look for, it tells us that, guys, we're nearing that tribulation period. And Jesus will return at the end of that period to set up and establish his millennial kingdom. And the Bible also tells us that the rapture of the church takes place before that 7-year tribulation period, which means, guys, Jesus could come at any moment. So take advantage of whatever time we have left. Never miss an opportunity to share the hope you have in Jesus Christ with someone else. Guys, we're in a dark, lost, and dying world in need of Jesus. So make sure you're doing everything you can to share the gospel with as many people as you can with whatever time we have left. But guys, this is unsustainable. We're heading toward a huge financial crisis. And on the other side of it, the United States will just be, a shadow of the power it once was. So let me know what you think. Maybe you disagree. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Make sure to check out the article, the 6-month anniversary post on Substack tomorrow at brittgillette.substack.com. And God willing, I will see you on Friday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to visit my Substack at brittgillette.substack.com. There you'll find my latest videos and articles, as well as notes, where I share the latest news headlines, the articles I'm reading, and the videos I'm watching. Subscribe for free, and each new post on Substack will be sent directly to your email. Just scroll to the bottom of the homepage and hit the subscribe button. As an added bonus, your first welcome email will include a link to a copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.